forest of Blackthorn stretched like a scar across the edge of the village, its trees twisted and black as if scorched by some unseen fire. The townsfolk called it cursed, a place where the earth swallowed secrets and spat out nightmares. They told stories of a witch who'd lived there since before the first stone of the village was laid, a creature born of spite and shadow. Her name lost to time, but her presence etched into every whispered warning. "Stay out of the woods," they'd say, "or she'll take you." Most listened. Clara didn't. Clara was 19, sharp-tongued and restless, with a mind that gnawed at mysteries like a dog with a bone. She'd grown up on the edge of Blackthorn, watching the trees sway in storms, hearing the faint hum that sometimes drifted out at night. The tales didn't scare her. They fascinated her. A witch? She doubted it. More likely some hermit or trick of the wind. But she needed to know. So, on a moonless night in late October, when the air bit at her skin and the village slept, she slipped out with a lantern, a knife, and a coil of rope tied to her belt. The forest swallowed her the moment she crossed its threshold. The silence was suffocating. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the thud of her own boots on the mossy ground. Her lantern threw jagged shadows across the trees, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. She walked for an hour, maybe two, the path twisting deeper until the village felt like a dream she'd left behind. That's when she heard it. A hum, low and resonant, weaving through the air. It wasn't human, not a song, not a chant, but it pulled at her, a thread tugging at her spine. She followed it. The trees parted into a clearing, and there she was. The figure stood beneath an oak so ancient its roots bulged from the earth like veins. She was tall, too tall. Her body stretched and thin, her arms dangling past her knees. She wore a cloak of stitched hides, patched with fur, and something that glistened like wet leather. Her head was bowed, hood shadowing her face. But Clara felt the weight of her gaze, a pressure that made her chest tighten. The hum stopped, and the silence roared. "Who are you?" Clara demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She raised her lantern higher, clutching the knife in her other fist. The figure didn't move, but a sound crept from beneath the hood. A rasp, like leaves dragged over stone. "You shouldn't have come." "I'm not here to play games," Clara snapped. "Show yourself." A laugh followed, slow and wet, bubbling up from somewhere deep. "Games? No, child, this is no game." The figure shifted, and the air grew heavy, thick with that sour-sweet rot Clara had smelled earlier. "You're mine now." Clara didn't have time to react. The ground beneath her buckled, and roots, thick, gnarled, pulsing, burst from the soil. They snaked around her ankles, her thighs, pinning her in place. She swung her knife, slicing into one, and it bled. A dark, viscous sap that splattered her hand and burned like acid. A shriek tore through the clearing, not from her, but from the trees themselves, as if they felt the wound. The roots tightened, wrapping her wrists, her throat, warm and slick like living flesh. Her lantern fell, the glass shattering, but the flame didn't die. It flared, casting the figure in a sickly glow. The hood slipped back, and Clara's breath caught. There was no face, just a hollow, a void of writhing shadows where eyes and mouth should have been, framed by hair that moved like smoke, curling and snapping in the air. The sight clawed at her sanity, a wrongness she couldn't name. She thrashed against the roots, but they only dug deeper, their heat seeping into her skin. "What are you?" Clara choked out, her voice fraying. The figure tilted its head, and the shadows in the hollow pulsed. "I am the woods," it said, each word a blade against her ears. I am the hunger beneath them, and you, little spark, are fuel.